What's up?
Yes, sir. We are back.
I mean, this is this how we're supposed to start things in professional podcasting land? Just yelling each other's names?
I mean, obviously, the Bengals plan isn't working, so we
Uh,
are going to have to switch up our entire routine. We're going to have the cat do the opener. And you're just
don't
going to
talk to
come
me
in.
about this cat, okay? It's been a pre-show
That's a good kitty.
struggle
That's
with
a
this
good kitty.
We love sunshine. We got our cat tree, but when Dad's podcasting, this becomes the cat tree, the desk and the microphone and all that good stuff. So I hope
good.
everybody enjoys the kitty cat.
It's good. It's gonna hit my ADD. I'm just gonna focus on the cat while you're talking.
Well, yeah, I mean, because I'm saying negative things about the Bengals, so it's better to have a cat in the background to look at. Honestly, that's how I consume sports content after a Bengals loss, if I consume it at all. But I obviously watch the press conferences and everything, and I watch it like I barely hear half the stuff they say. I just look at Joe or look at Zach and go, God, oh my gosh, just figure this thing out, please. Because it weighs down on our lives, Matt. It weighs down on our lives heavily. I mean, specifically because we have the Twitter account, which was thrown directly back in my face, our lovely 17-0 tweet, which went off the rails and was very fun while it happened. And I knew the cost of that engagement would be, some freezing cold takes action. Luckily, the main account didn't get us, which was great. It was just a couple buddies of mine from Ohio University that took advantage of that.
That's all right. That's all right. They're keeping us humble.
Yeah, well, speaking of that, I figured that's how we could do the show today, Matt. It's just pop on the Twitter account. Make sure you give us a follow if you're on Twitter. 3 a.m. Coney at Bengals Podcast, at 3 a.m. Coney to follow. And for me, this is the conversation, Matt, because I don't know how much negative engagement you saw in your life or with people that have been around you. But it's been negative town. I didn't think it would ever be this negative in Bengals Nation and Bengaldom again after the playoff win. After Jermaine Pratt picked that ball off, I really thought we would never be back here. But we're back here, and I'm having to tweet stuff out like this.
And I mean, and that's what it is. That's it. It was the curse is broken. The Bengals go to the Super Bowl. Expectations are now up here. If the Bengals could do that as the underdog in a year when they were not even supposed to win the division, then with a better O-line, with a great draft, how much better are they going to be this year? And they have had two of the slowest starts that I have ever seen, two of the worst halves that I have seen Joe Burrow ever have.
And yet,
only 3 points lost for each, overtime, and then right at the end.
I want everybody to understand what the Bengals have actually accomplished over these last couple games in terms of what Joe Burrow's done. Yes, I know that the halves have been ugly. Yes, I know that it hasn't been perfect. Yes, I know his passer rating is around 90. But at the same time, the Bengals have trailed by double digits in 4 consecutive games. These games were the AFC Championship game, the Super Bowl, a Week 1 division opponent, and the Dallas Cowboys and Micah Parsons and a backup quarterback. Now, that one's probably the worst of them all, but at the same time, it's the Cowboys and Micah Parsons, one of the best defensive players on the road. They trailed by 10 plus
he looks like
points.
it.
Well, yeah, they trailed by 10-plus points in all those games, and they tied or took the lead in every single one. And so you have to, combine both ideas at the same time. That, yes, there are first half struggles. Yes, the team is off to slow starts. Yes, Joe Burrow is struggling to see it early in games right now. But at the same time, if this is the nadir, as Jay Morrison, fellow Ohio Bobcat, he's done a great job covering the team, but he called Week 1 the nadir of Joe Burrow's career. Well, if the nadir of somebody's career is 338 yards, above a 60% completion percentage, I know he threw 4 interceptions, but he also had 4 game-winning throws and 3 game-winning drives in the same game. So if that's the nadir of his career, I am okay with that. That is something that I can, as a fan, I don't know if you're okay with that, Matt, but I remember the nadir of some old quarterbacks, and we'll get to that in our future tweets here, but there's a lot of quarterbacks out there who have much lower nadirs, not to overuse that word, than Joe Burrow has
You've only
experienced
said it
so far.
15 times, so
Yeah, well,
you're
I
not
just thought
overusing it
It
yet.
was such a powerful adjective. And I'm like, wow, the nadir. Like, really, we're at the bottom of the totem pole, and he still had all that success late in games. So I think Joe is struggling right now. I think Joe is playing poorly according to his standards, which his standards are be the best quarterback in the NFL. But he's not playing poorly compared to like NFL average. And in fact, most guys taking this kind of heat would have collapsed underneath the pressure.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. And I mean, looking at this tweet here, the positivity that came from this fan base that was 3 decades of not winning a playoff game. All of a sudden, we have Joe Burrow. It was like a shock. Like when you're outside in the cold and you're freezing, and then you're not supposed to take a warm shower immediately because it's going to put your entire body into shock and you die. Like you have to gradually warm yourself up. You might lose a few fingers to frostbite, but like you cannot go from freezing cold to scorching hot and then expect that your body can just take it. And that's what the Bengals fans had to deal with this year. We knew what Joe Burrow could be. We knew what the ceiling potentially was. We weren't ready for it last year. I mean, we thought, they'll win a playoff game, but going to the Super Bowl and then having it be Joe Burrow is cool. Being a fan of the Bengals is now cool.
Super cool.
Super cool. And to go from that to starting to believe it, okay, all right.
Why was it cool, Matt? But why was it cool? And this is what I need everybody to remember. Like, why was it cool? Because when all the chips were down, when his ACL and MCL was ripped completely in half, he was just nodding. Okay, back to work. Mm-hmm. When you're down 21-3 in the AFC Championship game, everybody looks at each other and goes, we're fine. Okay, back to work, right? When they're down 14-0 at halftime on the night that they're changing the franchise and opening up the Ring of Honor at the stadium, and they're down 14-0 to Urban Meyer and the Jacksonville Jaguars. He said, put it in my hands. It's over. We're fine. Stay cool, stay calm, stay collected. And the fan base and the team took that energy and they lived by it. Why? Because they had no other choice. There were no expectations. There were no believers. It was all doubt. So you had to believe because you hadn't seen anything else. It was your only option as a fan left. And we have to maintain that. The team has to maintain that. I mean, I think a great point my wife made is why on earth were Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd sitting together on the bench in a one-score game at the time, 17-17 tie, looking like the game was already over. Like that, they're defeated, right? Jamar Chase after the extra point misses. Like there is this like, you've got to remember why you made it to where you made it. And that was positivity and believing beyond doubt. Like faith so strong it's nearly a religion. And that permeated to the team. And it feels different now. And we need to make sure that we don't lose too much of that. And again, you can be critical of the team and we can talk in ways that are constructive. But it has been very disappointing to see the actions and the tweets.
But I mean, to see them, 3 best wide receiver trio in the league, defeated in a one-score game. I mean, their expectations are higher too. They're getting punched in the mouth and losing to teams that are supposed to be a lot worse. A touchdown worse. 7 points worse in the spread. And so, for Bengals, for the team, for the players to have this reality check, there's panic, and then there's how you deal with the adversity, how you deal with not being up to expectations. Yeah. Because I mean that's the floor. They got to get higher than that. This is the beginning of the season, and they have to, if they want to have a similar season to last season, they have got to do a lot better now because they didn't have the expectations last season. They were fine being the underdog, and now they have that pressure.
And there's a lot more teams that, I mean, the Cowboys and Steelers played their ass off, man. They really did. I mean, they put it all on the line. They were hyped up for it. And those are the type of games you're going to play all freaking year. You got to get ready for it. You got to step up for it.
Yeah, getting those early leads didn't hurt them either because then they were just hanging on for dear life in the second half.
They caught an early lead against the AFC champion. These teams are healthy. They don't know who they are or are not yet. Like, the worst time to play a backup quarterback is the first time he's starting, right? Mike White, Cooper Rush, great examples of it, right?
Mike White.
The time to
PTSD.
play a backup quarterback is it's week 4. He's lost 2 out of the last 3, and everybody's like, he's really not that good, is he? Right?
That's why he's the backup, huh?
That's why he's the backup. You mentioned the Migos. This is Jamar Chase saying we got to take some shots down the field. They're seeing a lot of cover 2 to take shots, so that's difficult.
Mm-hmm.
This is a recap from the Dallas game. Why not try a 60-yard field goal? What is your opinion on Zach Taylor? That's a jump-off conversation of week 1, all I heard was he's got to be more conservative. I don't know. Why are we coming out and empty and taking shots down the field? I mean, the 4 interceptions. It's Mitch Trubisky on the other side. It's a bad offense. Just come out, run the ball, be conservative, you'll be fine. And then the only thing I heard after they lost to Dallas in week 2 was, God, stop coaching scared, Zach. Stop coaching scared. Like, guys, we got to pick one because the situation was the same situation as the Cowboys, right? It was bad offense because of a backup quarterback and an elite pass rusher, so you want to be careful. So what do you want them to do? Week 1 strategy or week 2? Like that, and I'm very annoyed with that idea of it was the same type of team, so you should have the same type of strategy, and Zach Taylor did what the fans wanted in week 2, what they said they should do in week 1, and then he gets crushed for it both times. And
I think they were more similar than people saying that it was a completely different strategy. One was scared and then one was absurd. But there were a few plays that made me scratch my head. I am not a fan of running the ball on 2 and 9 or 1st and 15. It's just the big plays aren't there. And that's the issue. It's less right now, I think, about Zach's play calling and more that the big plays that used to be there that were called, Joe is just not able to chase the ball because he doesn't have enough time. Or like that, you forget 4 bad plays in a row if you have a 75-yard Jamar Chase touchdown on the next play after that for the 5th play.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they don't have a play over 20 yards or something like that. It's absurd. So without that big play ability, then the play action isn't really doing that much.
Yeah, but really it's all the running game. So it's basically like when I hear criticisms from fans, and I'm going to go ahead and skip up to this tweet just so that we can make sure we get it in. This is the poison on the tree. This is the little. You think about a tree and it's got all these problems. You're like, oh, this over here is a problem and this over here is a problem. It's a lot like
trees
politics.
Are notorious for having problems.
Right. In politics, you can point at whether you're right wing or left wing. You can point at every issue across the board and go, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem. And yet we all agree it traces back to there's too much money in politics. Like that's the main issue for most things, right? There's a lot of money being thrown around and it makes it less democratic. We can almost all agree to that. Same thing we need to all agree about the Bengals running game. And specifically the Bengals running game in the first quarter when it's more based on, hey, the defense is fresh. They've had all week to look at your run schemes, and you've had all week to look at their defensive schemes. Can you come out and can you run the ball in the first quarter? And here's the first quarter yards per rush. We have it on the screen of the Cincinnati Bengals. 3.3, 31st in 2021, 3.6, 29th in 2021. They were 3.9 yards per rush in the first quarter against Pittsburgh, Matt, in week 1. And if Joe Burrow doesn't turn it over 4 times, they win, right? Or if there's a made extra point. They were 1.0 yards per attempt, yards per rush in the first quarter against the Dallas Cowboys. Absolutely embarrassing. It's not going to help. It'll just completely kill your entire offense because you mentioned I don't like the runs out of 2nd and 9 or the 1st and 15 runs. Well, the 2nd and 9 specifically is because you had a 1-yard run on first down. And now Joe gets a run look on 2nd and 9. So he's like, well, I'd rather operate in 3rd and 4 than throw against this very heavy pass defense on 2nd and 9 because it'll most likely just be a 3rd and 9. Or I'll take
But then you only get 1 yard,
Yeah,
or it's an offsides.
Exactly. So you got to be able to run the ball on 1st down, and you got to be able to run the ball early in games. That sets the tempo. That sets the mood. And Tony Pollard, I think, demonstrated that for the Cowboys. Ran all over the Bengals in the first half, and it allowed Cooper Rush to have 165 passing yards. And a further example of that is if you look at the record further on this tweet, Matt, specifically about Joe Mixon, look at the record since the beginning of last year when Joe Mixon, in the first quarter, I didn't even do the game because he's very good in the 3rd quarter, but just in the first quarter, if they're above 4 yards per rush, 6-2 record, and the losses were to the Rams in the Super Bowl, a game that every Bengals fan feels like we should have won, and to the Green Bay game in overtime, a game that all Bengals fans feel like they should.
Nobody wanted to win, but the Bengals absolutely could have won it.
Without a doubt. Now, the 5-2 record from 3.0 to 3.9, those 2 losses were just turnovers, right? So I could even do this stat of saying, like, if you're above 3.0, that's bad. But if you at least have a competent running game in the first quarter, the Bengals are an 11-12 win team every time because Joe Burrow is that good, right? It takes turnovers to beat them, essentially, or a great team and quarterback like Green Bay and Los Angeles. But then look at the under 2.9. 2-5 record, and the wins were 2 games probably shouldn't have won. The Thursday night game against Jacksonville and the playoff win against Tennessee, where Joe Burrow had to become God for them to win those games, right? And anybody that watched those games know that he did become ethereal almost in the way he played, despite all the crap that was going on around him against Jacksonville and against Tennessee. Obviously, Tennessee a lot more impressive.
And I mean, if he's just holding on to that ability until the second half of the season in the same way that he did last season, then you can argue that he is just resting right now. Joe Burrow is accidentally just human right now.
Yeah, well, no, it's that he needs information. He's a computer. And this season, all the teams deleted all their information that they'd given Joe Burrow. That normally doesn't happen, but he made the Super Bowl. So everybody all offseason was like, how the hell do we beat Joe Burrow? So they threw the whole book out, and they brought a whole new one to the table. So now this supercomputer he's got on his head has got to read all this new information that all these teams are throwing at him. And that's why Joe is going to be much better in year 11, if we don't get him killed, than he is now. Because there will be less and less tricks and quirks and all this stuff that he's seen before. And Tom Brady talks about all the time. He's like, I got the answers to the test. And so you'll see a similar thing happen to Joe, and that's why you see in second halves in these games, Matt, he looks great because he's seen it. You've shown the book, he's processed it, he sees it. And so as the season goes along, he'll see it more and more and more and more. And I think that this is going to be a similar thing every year of Joe Burrow's career. The first 3 or 4 weeks are an adjustment period. They're kind of a feeling out process. And that's why you got to be able to run the ball. Because running the ball is not a scheme or a feeling out process. It's lining it up and kicking guys' ass. And the Bengals need to have that ability. And every time they've shown that ability, Matt,
they got to have that attitude too. I'm not seeing that from them.
Yeah, but every time they've shown the ability to line it up in double tight end in the first quarter and shove it down your throat at 5 yards a carry, they've not only won, they have blown every team out they've done that to. Dismantled every single team they've done that to. So doing that is, if you want this team to be the juggernaut that you and I hyped it up to be, it's got to be with the running game in the first quarter, establishing the tone by running the rock. And they have to do it, or it's going to be a slog all year, and you're going to hope for desperate Joe Burrow comebacks all season long. Because Joe's got to see, everybody's going to throw tricks at Joe, and he's going to need to see it for a quarter. And if you're not able to run the ball, you'll have sloppy drives at the start of games, which is what we've seen all 54 games of the Joe Burrow era.
Yeah, we have. And we got another tweet if you scroll down. That is the Joe Burrow trailed by 10-plus points, 4 consecutive games.
Yep.
Came back to tie or lead in all 4, while still taking over 5 sacks a game.
Yeah, is this not an accomplishment? Like, am I crazy? Like, is this
It's not nothing.
Does this indicate a man that is uncomfortable, that's scared, that is worried about taking too many hits? That's not what this reads to me at all.
I don't think Joe Burrow is scared. I think the rest of us are scared. We don't want him to be Andrew Luck, but
Well,
he doesn't seem to care.
Andrew Luck did not like football nearly as much as Joe Burrow did. Andrew Luck had a great respect for football, and his father played high-level football. But, like...
I think that you can love something, but if it abuses you for years on end, you might change how you feel about it.
Yeah, but again, Andrew, Joe would have been a linebacker. So the abuse he's taking right now is still not on par with what Logan Wilson deals with every week, right?
It's true.
And so that's what Joe Burrow sits there and thinks. So when he hears you guys talk about hits and stuff, he really thinks it's silly. And there's so many times that Joe takes a sack that most quarterbacks would have thrown it away. And it's because the yardage doesn't matter and it's third down. And because he's trying to, he runs into hits. So it's almost like it looks like he's uncomfortable because he's so comfortable. Now, there is an uncomfortability with the linemen and when they're going to fail on their blocks. And a thing I could say about the end of last year is, yes, all those guys sucked, but Joe knew exactly how they sucked. So, he could kind of
the average time.
Yeah, I can kind of know.
Less than 1 second when he would have to run away from this side of the pocket.
Yeah, I know how Hakeem how this is going to fail most of the time, right? And you can just tell he stepped on Cordell Volson on a play when he was about to throw into the flat. He doesn't know and he hasn't had time. The appendectomy was huge. I mean, that's 6 days in the hospital he spent. And Joe's not going to make that a big deal, but I think that's an obvious big deal. There's just so much. He's got to get used to everything around him to get that elite pocket presence back. But the fact that he's doing all of this while taking that punishment and you feel like he's not the same player, is that not a positive? That's what I don't understand. Is it's so bad, yet it's not that bad. Do you guys not remember Andy Dalton? Do you not remember the Thursday night football game? Do you not remember when
the Dolphins game? That was so good.
Not well. Do you remember when Brian Hoyer and the Browns that would later replace Brian Hoyer with Johnny Manziel that season beat the Bengals 27-3 on prime time? Go look at Andy Dalton's numbers in that game. And that takes me to our last tweet before we get out of here.
Is that the game where he had the 2.0 passer rating?
2.0.
Yeah, that was a good one.
So this is what
classic Andy Dalton game.
Because this is something that maybe only I know a lot of people aren't saying this, right? So I'm not mad at Bengals fans in general. But I heard it in the stadium 3 times last year, and I've read it on Twitter 4 or 5 times. And it's an idea that needs to die. It is such a crime, the fact that that we're doing this at all. Because Joe Burrow is struggling right now, and yet he has not even come close to some of the struggles that Andy Dalton had at numerous times throughout his career. And that's what these numbers show. So, career games under 60 passer rating. Joe still hasn't had one. Still hasn't had one. Even the Ravens game when he gets his teeth kicked in. Even the Steelers game. Because he still completes 50% of his passes in every single game. 14 points or less. Joe Burrow, 3 times. Guess when all 3 of those games were, Matt? Rookie season. Steelers first time he played him. Ravens first time he played him. In his goddamn debut when he didn't even play a preseason game before that. And then you've got playoff touchdowns, which I don't even need to get into. And we know how bad Andy Dalton played in the playoffs. Joe Burrow, if he retired right now, would finish as a better all-time player than Andy Dalton. Point blank, period. He'd be above him in the Bengals Hall of Fame rankings. He'd be above him in the total Hall of Fame rankings for the NFL. He would have more respect from his peers, and he would have accomplished more in his career than Andy Dalton did. So the next time you even want to think about comparing Andy Dalton to Joe freaking Burrow, you need to shove it and take it somewhere else. It's dumb, stupid, and it just shows how insecure of a Bengals fan you are, that you can't see past your fears of experiencing something you already experienced to see the truth in front of your eyes. And you go, oh, it looks like Andy Dalton. How? Does Andy Dalton in a game he takes 7 sacks against the Pittsburgh Steelers score 20 points and throw 4 game-winning throws? No, he doesn't. We saw those games he took 7 sacks. We lost 30-3.
Now, this is not anyone calling for Andy Dalton to come back.
No.
This is just, I think, the bar for Bengals fans in the last terrible quarterback performances that they can remember in this PTSD state of the pre-Burrow era, which I have completely blacked out. I don't remember anything from before the Joe Burrow era. So I mean, I'll take your word for it. But that's the bar. So the bar is wrong. Joe Burrow has not played as bad as Andy Dalton at Andy Dalton's worst. But I also don't like seeing Joe Burrow get close to any of those stats. I love to have his bar and his ceiling so high above Andy Dalton's even best games that I don't even have to try to remember his name.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I know everybody just goes back to the last starting quarterback, and it's easy, and I know most fans aren't doing this. One fan did say to this comment, though, well, it's not fair because Andy played 9 seasons in Cincinnati, and Joe's only in his 3rd. All right, well, let's go ahead and do that pace then. So that's times 3. All right, so 0 times 3 is 0, you nitwit. 3 times 3 is only 9.
You nitwit.
You idiot. And then let's do the playoff touchdowns. Let's go ahead and give Andy times 3, even though I have no reason to do that. That's 3. And then Burrow times 3 is, oh my God, it's 15. So Burrow's still better in every category, even if I pace it out for their career. Anyway, but, kind of like
so this is Bolt brother. Burrow is better than Dalton's. Burrow is better than Dalton's. Has started 5 times as many games. Yeah. There's your shout out, Chargers fan.
Yeah.
But
they're in good spirits because they're 1-1.
They've won a game.
Oh, then this one. Dalton 52-27 first 5 years. Joe Burrow 12-15-1 so far. All right, and now do the playoffs. Also, what Andrew Whitworth played with Andy Dalton, dude. Like, Jesus Christ. And then Dove Kleiman basically tweeting out, Matt, something that we already know, that Joe Burrow doesn't get on social media. We saw
yeah, I mean, it's distraction. I understand it.
T. Higgins saying something that I said on the podcast in July should have been the answer to every time they talked about the Super Bowl or got asked about last year. Finally, the Bengals are actually saying this, which is honestly, I'm going to be real with you. I don't want to talk about last season. Last season is in the past. I want to talk about this season. Mm-hmm. That should have been the approach in August. Okay. And I've heard some loose rumors that week 1, the environment in the locker room wasn't exactly serious from Cincinnati. And more of like, they felt like they were made, Yeah. And it's almost better they lost week 1 just for a reality check.
That's what it looked like when they came out week 1. It's like Joe had the comments like, oh, if you play man, good luck. Like we got all these wide receivers. And then in the first half of that first game, nothing was working. And so they're like,
they didn't play man. I want to make it clear. Second. Nobody's playing man. Because that would still happen. They are playing more Tampa 2 than they did against Patrick Mahomes' Chiefs at their ceiling. Like they are that terrified of, and not just that terrified, that understanding of the Bengals O-line
of the
so
threat,
bad.
Yeah, of the risk, of the reward. You're going to give away the little chippy shit and not let Jamar Chase take it over the top.
And the understanding that, okay, the Chiefs, they normally had their offensive line figured out. So if you don't get to the quarterback in Tampa 2, you give it all that space over the middle. But those routes take a little time to develop. But real quick, I know you got to get out of here, Matt.
Yes, sir.
A look at the Jets safeties, because we talk about this too high safety look in the Tampa 2 that everybody's running. Well, you got to have good safeties if you want to run 2 high safety sets, because the 2 high safeties are going to be your main coverage pieces. And yes, the Jets have solid corners. We're very familiar with one. Good old Sauce Gardner.
Sauce.
But their safeties have a lot of experience in the NFL. They have not been very good in their time in the NFL. And as you can see, There's only 71 qualified safeties, so LaMarcus Joyner has been the worst safety in the NFL so far, and
That's
Jordan
good.
Whitehead has been 69th.
Nice.
According to PFF. So when we look at those weaknesses in the Jets secondary, gives you hope. If the Bengals can run the ball, start doing some play action, I think you can get the safeties to bite a lot, and I think the big plays can be available for this team. But it's about running the ball. Another thing is you got to think about the last 3 pass rushers they faced. Donald, Parsons, Watt. Ain't nobody like that on the Jets.
What?
And ain't nobody like that on the Bengals schedule until Myles Garrett on Halloween. So this is the time for the O-line to get right. This is the time to catch a rhythm. This is the time to get going. This is my last loss week being probably as positive as I am being.
So if they lose by 3 again,
I'm not going to join the mob, but there are some systemic issues if they lose to the Jets that are probably not going to get figured out before the year's up. Now, Joe Burrow might ascend to the ethereal plane, and they might win 9-10 games. But again, to win championships, you cannot ask Joe Burrow to be a god. You have to be a really great team, and then he will be a god when the moment presents itself. But if you're asking him from quarter 1, yay, go be a god.
yeah, if it's put the team on your back.
He doesn't have the natural arm strength to do that every game. Neither did Tom Brady. Tom Brady needed running games. Tom Brady needed O-lines. Now he makes those pieces better because of the leader he is and how smart he is, but you got to have it. And the Bengals will get better at it. I think they'll be fine. So
I still want that Joe Burrow Tom Brady game, and this is looking like it could potentially be his last year with all of this extra drama. Oh, Inception. But I mean, if that happens, I'm here for it.
yeah, that was a good run through Twitter. Make sure that everybody gives us a follow. I'm fighting the sun here. It's a bad one.
Better the sun than the cat.
No, I'd rather the cat, man.
You'd rather the cat? There you go.
I'd rather
That's
the
back
cat.
there.
You got predictions, man? For this Sunday?
For the Jets, I believe they're only 5-point favorites.
Yeah, they should be 8. If they would have won one of those first 2 games,
They would have won one of them. Yeah, it would be over a touchdown. I am going to say that they figure it out. They at least don't look as garbage in the first half, and they win by at least 10.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that there's no way. I would be blown away if they figure out this first and second drive problem.
Watch
Let
this
me
one.
get down here. I would be blown away if they figured out their first and second drive problems fully. They have to be able to run the ball. And I just think that there might be a misunderstanding of what their first quarter problems are.
I mean, there was some communication issues,
Yeah.
and it's just
That'll get ironed out. I'm not really worried about that because that's about work and focus.
figure it out.
The work and focus will be there. But I think there might be an understanding of how do we get first and second drive touchdowns, because that's the real comparison. Jay Morrison mentioned that. You're great in drives 3 through 8, bad in drives 1 and 2. So just I'm worried about their start, so I would probably take the Bengals at -4.5, but I'm worried about it. I'm not going to lay any money on it. I would just take Bengals money line.
Yeah.
Maybe pair it with the Joe Burrow over on yardage just because of the Jets safeties. But yeah, a lot of people got to play better. Tyler Boyd's got to play better. Joe Mixon's got to play better, and I think they will. And I think they get a win, an ugly win, a win where we're not all satisfied. We're still going to have things to talk about. But then that short week turnaround, I think they put on a show against the Dolphins Thursday night, and then it sets up for that big Sunday nighter. So I'm going 27-21 Cincinnati. Joe
I'll
Flacco
go-
makes some dumb throws down the stretch.
I'll go 24-13. And yeah, and I think you're right. Like, this game is a stop the panic game. They have to win this game. If they win it by a lot, then that just helps to propel into the rest of the season. And then we'll forget all about this 0-2 start if they keep winning the games that they're supposed to win.
Yeah, I mean, Matt, if they fix this first and second drive issue, they're going to win the Super Bowl. I promise you that. If they become
two losses, we still got optimistic sun in the face Lucas over here.
This is what the thing it is. All right, I look so unprofessional and unreliable.
You are blinded by the light.
As a football prognosticator, which is the title, whatever it is.
Bless you.
But like, if they fix their issues on drives 1 and 2. Which The Athletic has covered extensively. It is a very drastic difference from the rest of the league. And I don't think it's something that they'll figure out this year with the running game where it's at in the first quarter. But if they do, if they start scoring on opening drives, like they get on a streak, Andy Dalton used to do it all the time. Those teams would come out and score on the first drive, and then they wouldn't score again. It's almost the opposite problem. If they figure out drives 1 and 2 and become a dynamic offense in the first quarter, they will win the Super Bowl. Because I still believe there's not a single thing I've seen that changes my perception of the rest of the roster or Joe Burrow or Jamar Chase. I'm a little more worried about the offensive line than I was, but I think it can get better and they face elite pass rushers.
Yeah.
The first and second drive thing is a great hindrance to winning a Super Bowl. So if they figure that out, I think that they're going to end up being a 11-plus win team. And they're going to win the Super Bowl. If they
it's also a great hindrance to my heart health if they're constantly playing back at the end of the fourth quarter.
I don't know what we're going to do in a blowout. Like, this is the thing, is that I'm kind of worried if we do win in a blowout, because then we'll get into another close game and we'll still have the anxiety of like, oh, we haven't won a close game yet. Like, it just, listen, 0-2 start, this thing is going to be a freaking roller coaster ride for the rest of the year. It will be extremely stressful for everybody, for every game. The rest of the season, because every game now will feel like a playoff game, unless they get to 9-2.
It's a save the season game. It's a back on track type of game.
They got it
with the 0-2 start. We feel so far out of expectations, off of the track that we expected them to be on. Where this can continue and just be absolute garbage shits, or this can get back on track.
Yeah, I would be genuinely. I'm not going to say that, but 2-2.
Say it.
I'm not going to say it. 2-2.
Fuck the Browns. Is that what you're going to say?
Well, yeah, fuck the Browns. But 2-2. 2-2 is necessary. I'm not going to sit here and say 3-2 is necessary. It really depends on how the Ravens look over the next few weeks. But you got to win the next two, and there's a chance if the Ravens perform well over the next 2 weeks that you're going to have to win that Sunday Night Football matchup on the road in Baltimore, a team that freaking hates you.
That'll be a big one.
More than the Steelers hated you.
And the Ravens do not look bad. Lamar Jackson does not look bad.
No, but their secondary looks like dog shit, and I was told it was going to be so good, and we've learned to fix it because Joe Burrow's torched just for 1,000 yards, and now Tua is throwing for 480 and 6 touchdowns. So the list went from guys who throw for 400 yards and 4+ touchdowns against the Ravens. The list went from Tom Brady and Peyton Manning to, within the stretch of 2 years, Joe Burrow twice and now Tua Tagovailoa. So the Ravens, to me, this defensive juggernaut, that's their biggest concern. They might finish 25th in defense. So I don't think they have the safeties to keep up with the Bengals. So I'm worried about the Ravens.
I need some big plays. That's another thing I need. I need some bigger plays from Jamar Chase and this offense in this next game. If it's another less than 20 yards, even if they win, it's just going to be like, what are we doing?
Well,
let the lightning out of the box.
I need you to get used to it. Like the Bengals and everybody, we got to get used to it's going to be pounding your head against the brick wall. Teams are playing double high safety, Tampa 2. They're retreating before we're even play action. Like, they are playing us like we were, because we were, the greatest vertical offense in the history of the NFL. Right?
Because we were.
Because the Bengals literally were, in 2021, the greatest vertical offense in the history of the NFL. By numbers, by like 30-plus yard touchdowns, everything. And they're treating us like it. So you have to have 19-play drives that score touchdowns. And you have to beat teams into cover 3. or single high safety looks. You have to beat them into it. Because if you beat them into it, you get one-on-one on the outside, and then we're partying again. But until you
Sounds
say,
fun. I'm in.
we're going to beat them into it, it'll never happen. So I'm ready to get out of here whenever you are. I'm kind of waiting for you to end.
All right, 3 p.m. 3 p.m. We can go until 3 a.m. if we wanted to. 3 p.m. That'll do it for us here on the 3 a.m. Coney. We are going to try to go live every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Coney time, not Chicago time, not Central time, Coney time.
Coney
2 p.m.
time.
Coney time. It's Coney time. Hopefully, we are here next week saying I told you so, and that the 1 and 2 Bengals look like they are starting to get it together.
There's a level of win that I'm on here Sunday night, drunk and talking a lot of shit. Okay,
Do it.
So
just
there's a level.
you
I will
just go
through
fucking
my
crazy.
Twitter feed. I'll go through my Twitter feed. I might bring up some beefs that I've kept hidden out in the public eye, because there's a few guys. And
If we keep this format going where you're just scrolling through Twitter, I mean, you're just gonna start going through your fucking messages and just, oh, this fucking guy. It's just drunk Lucas live.
Let me tell you about the time I blocked this dude's shot off the backboard, and he still holds a grudge about it. Like, it ends up being that type of story.
Yeah, probably ruined his entire life. You know, you can't come back from that.
Well, no, you can come back from that. I mean, I think he hit a 3 in my eye on the next time down. So it is.
Okay, all right. End the stream now. That is it for us.